Good afternoon / evening, depending on where you're listening from in our non-existent audience audience world. My name is Franco, and joining me, as per usual, is the Murphinator.
I'm here.
Not here is Dean. No more shall be spoken of that. Now, being that Dean is not here and Jason has been lazy, this week there'll be no Clever Man. I'm sorry, Scoot, there'll be no Clever Man. I watched the Clever Man yesterday. I was up to date, ready to talk Clever Man. I was going to talk about how the first 15 minutes of episode 4 I found a little bit boring, but wow, did it get way better. But it's on hiatus. I don't want to talk
Okay, well, that's now giving me incentive to watch it again.
Yeah. The last
I'm 2 weeks behind now.
Episode 3, particularly good. Episode 4, a little bit boring in the first third. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be one of those... For a series that's only got, 6 episodes.
Hold it, Franco. You're starting to talk about Clever Man, and we've said we weren't going to talk about Clever Man.
Okay.
And you're already diving into it.
Well, I'm just going to... just this little part of it in terms of... I was worried that in typical series where they have a bit longer runs, they tend to have filler episodes. And I was worried that episode
this was
4
going to be a filler.
was going to be a filler. And that worried me. But it wasn't, so we'll discuss that next week, where Jason's going to catch up on episodes 3 and 4.
That is interesting, the concept of filler episodes. I mean, I've been watching Orville with Dean. That is definitely... while it's a good show, Dean loves it dearly, it is very much following the old school Star Trek formula, where it's very episodic, standalone episode kind of things with essentially filler. Everything's a filler episode because they don't normally forward the arc. So
is Scott MacFarlane the main writer
Seth
for the
MacFarlane?
Orville? Yeah, is he the main writer?
I don't know.
Okay,
He's definitely the main producer.
He's never been known for anything he's been involved with, well, that I've known of, particularly Family Guy, American Dad. There's no real continuing story arc in those. They're very episodic.
Yeah,
very self-contained. They try and keep the canon going through the shows.
I mean,
general.
it's a really good fun show and definitely worth watching, but it doesn't try to get too serious. Well, actually, no, it does touch on some serious subjects, but doesn't take itself too seriously, if you know what I mean. So,
well, I think that's the luxury of when you go with self-contained episodes. You can jump randomly from any topic you wish to discuss, which can be allow a lot of flexibility.
I mean, this last episode had all sorts of issues with the time-space continuum, where the Orville was supposed to have been destroyed, and therefore it was being acquired by a antiquities curator who was going to transport it forward in time and on-sell the ship. And it was good. It was a good episode. It's just whenever you get into these things, at the end of it, when you really think of it, you go, hang on, how does that maintain consistency with its own sort of the way it thinks time works and blah blah blah.
So were they having a dig at any particular sci-fi show, or were they making a stance and wrote, this is how the space-time continuum works?
No, I don't think they were taking it terribly seriously. It was just this is what I mean. It was just a story where they meet a mysterious traveler from the future. They don't know that she's from the future. Well, the interesting thing, it was Charlize Theron. They're getting serious actors in for each show.
I wonder how they manage that. Is that just Seth MacFarlane's good friends with the Hollywood A-list circuit?
There must be something, because what was it? Who was in there? It was Taken dude, Liam
Neeson.
Liam Neeson was in there just for a brief appearance. Could have been played by anyone, but no, they made it Liam Neeson. But big name actors coming through and playing the part. But definitely old school kind of Star Trek stylings. Which, I mean, that definitely is enjoyable and easy to watch. Easy to watch.
Isn't that part of the piss take, though? He's specifically targeting...
Well, maybe he saw a hole in the market, because everything coming out, all the hardcore sci-fi coming out these days tends to be heavily arc-oriented, which something like The Expanse, which is only arc.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you cannot jump in halfway through season 2 and know what the fuck's going on.
There's no filler episode that you can go, hey, this is just a feel-good blah.
Yeah, every episode is a vehicle to drive the plot arc.
That's right. You've finished, all of those or something at the moment?
No, I'm halfway through season 2.
Okay.
So that's going well. What I did do, which will feed in nicely to something you wanted to discuss, was for quite some time now, I've been planning on making my partner watch the original Blade Runner.
Oh, really?
And I had hoped to watch the director's cut. So
the final cut, I think, is the one.
Yeah, because that's
there's been a few different
cuts. The first cut, that was the cinematic release, is terrible, particularly because they went down a path of they feared that the American audience couldn't handle long gaps of non-dialogue
Yeah.
or implied plot. They had to, so they went back and inserted Harrison Ford doing narrative.
Yeah, yeah. Which wasn't the original vision of the director,
No,
was it?
and it's terrible. And they over-explained the ending to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
Whereas in the final cut, in the director's cut,
There's no narrative. There's no narrator.
there's no narrative. There's a lot more of the violence is reintroduced. So I believe you do see the death of the guy who makes eyes and so forth, where they cut that out in the original release. And
I have to go back and rewatch that now. Now that I've seen the sequel, I need to go back and rewatch. It's given me incentive to go back and rewatch it.
I love it. Make sure you watch the director's cut or the final cut.
I remember I went and saw the cinematic release when I was a kid.
Wow.
At 13. I remember it was a friend's birthday party, and we all went off. And I think I was 13. I can't remember exactly, but it was a mate's birthday party. We all went off to see Blade Runner, and it was pretty awesome. We all thought it was pretty awesome to a 13-year-old kid. Although once again, there was maybe because that was a cinematic release, was made for a broader audience, perhaps with less attention.
Yeah, because I remember I saw Blade Runner when I was in my childhood, and I remember it fondly. I don't think when I first watched it I appreciated the plot, but I just the boldness of the cinematic experience and the interpretation of the future just blew me away.
Yeah.
So whilst I wasn't necessarily understanding the play with film noir, that that aspect of it. What do you call it? The noir detective series?
Film noir. Yeah,
film noir. Just their interpretation of the future blew me away. And obviously the technology didn't seem as dated when I saw it in the 80s as opposed to...
But
some aspects of it are just timeless. Then very old school, 86X IBM type looking machines around the thing. And the thing that inspects your eye to detect if you're a replicant is you've got a respirator attached to it. Seeing the...
Yeah, you're right. A little bit of steampunk, and it's a little bit odd. You know what?
Heavy use of
do you remember what
smoking.
year that was set in?
2017.
2019.
19, sorry.
Yeah,
So,
but I mean, were they off or what?
Yeah, just a little.
They could have set it 50 years further in the future, and it wouldn't have been an issue. You know what I mean? But apparently,
when you were in the 80s,
1980. When was it? Would have been 83 or something.
84 it was released.
Okay. And we were going to be in the stars, colonizing planets by then.
It seemed
with hover cars. Not only have we not got hover cars, we haven't got hoverboards.
But come on, 2019 did seem a long way away.
It did seem a long way away. And its version of the future where climate change, I mean, it was predicting some more catastrophic climate effects than we've got already.
Climate change, globalization.
Yeah. The vision, the visuals were amazing.
Yes, that hasn't dated. The sort of the film technique they used hasn't dated. That just people's characteristics didn't date either.
Yeah.
So there still had a bit of misogyny, but it was only a very minute part of the show.
There's bound to be misogyny. I don't think that's going away in a hurry.
That trope of when a woman says no, but you just give her a hearty shake and then she just melts into your arms.
Yeah, apparently.
It's a bit sickening to watch now.
Yeah, a little bit rapey.
Yeah,
I think is the phrase. That was the scene between Harrison Ford and Sean Young, which where he was kind of coercing, but not. It was.
It's a grey area that I felt uncomfortable watching, but apparently was acceptable as a trope.
Probably back in the 80s, it was probably incredibly minor.
Well, I had to deal with that. And then the following night, I watched Temple of Doom, which had a similar sort of rapey thing.
Oh, really?
With the bullwhip, she says, "I've had enough of this. I'm off." And then he cracks the whip round her wrap and brings it back in, and wow, just a kiss on the lips, and it's all sorted.
I haven't seen Temple of Doom in a long time either.
But circling back to Blade Runner, unfortunately, my beloved partner did not enjoy the experience. Got a little bored.
Okay, so it was my birthday yesterday, and it was like, okay, I want to go and see Blade Runner, and my own partner was going, oh, and she looked it up. She'd already checked it out ahead of time, knowing that I'd be wanting to see this, and she said, "Do you realise that's 2 hours and 43 minutes?" And she has a pretty hard limit on anything that's not entirely watchable to her of about a standard feature film length, which is about 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So I went, look, I'm not going to make you do it. I'm going to go and get my boys and we'll watch it. So
Has she watched the first one?
no, she hasn't seen the first one, and I'm glad I didn't try to force her into it, because if you haven't seen the first one, it's a long movie. I loved it. I did like it a lot, but it's a long movie. And like that original, it's by director Denis Villeneuve.
Yes. In association with Ridley Scott.
Yeah, and you know how you were saying in the first, the final cut allowed for some long pauses, and
Yes.
well, they have a lot of long establishing shots, pauses, no dialogue for a while,
Just letting you take it in.
and it's visually, it's fucking stunning. It really is. It's amazing, and it's worth seeing on the big screen for that. The score, they go back to the old Vangelis style scoring.
Yep.
However, in some places that's overpowering. They go. I don't know. I went and watched it in the Titan AE cinema in Reading, which is supposedly the big sound and all that kind of stuff. And I've had this problem with that cinema before. It was a bit too loud, actually. And it's not just me. It was also my youngest son. My son was also feeling the same sort of, hey, they went a bit overboard on the sound there. But really
that
good.
sounds like it might have been a fault to the cinema as opposed to the score.
Perhaps, yeah. But although it depends on how they put the sound together. But definitely at certain points it was like, I think you're really pushing this sound a little bit, being a bit overbearing with it. But it was good. Harrison Ford was in it, and I got to say, it's his best performance I've seen him make for a long time. He's been phoning it in on movies for
He's been just a cranky old prick in a lot of movies.
He was only in it, like, okay, this may be a little bit of a spoiler, but he was only in it in the 2 hour 43 minutes. He was only in it for the last 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So maybe you could hold it together and keep interested for that long.
They really overplayed therefore in the promos, they really overplayed his participation in the movie.
Absolutely. They make it look like he's in most of the movie, but if you take the proportion of the trailer that he's in, yeah.
Because my thoughts were, why even bother having Harrison Ford in for the story?
You know what? They could have left him out. To be honest, they could have written it in a way that he didn't have to be in there at all, and he could have been referred to. I mean, he was referred to plenty. They used a lot of old sound, a lot of audio clips, and it was really to forward the story, and it was used well.
So, I mean, I'm going to digress back to the original Blade Runner now, because it's very fresh in my mind now. Harrison Ford didn't make that movie. That movie, you know how some movies you can never see it performed by any other actor. If you go back and watch it, he doesn't do an amazing
Rutger
performance.
Hauer plays an amazing part.
That he made that movie. Without him, there's no Blade Runner.
I was
Harrison
reading...
Ford could be swapped out with somebody else. I'm not saying Harrison Ford did a bad job. He did a stellar performance, but his performance didn't make it the movie. Anyone could have done the hard-boiled detective. You could have Peter Falk, for instance.
Oh, that might have been pushing a little bit, but yeah, okay.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, Rutger Hauer. Without Rutger Hauer, it would be very hard to envisage. I
was doing a little bit of reading around this last week or something when it was coming up. Just some of the old sort of trivia around it. Rutger Hauer actually adapted a lot of the dialogue for his role. Like
especially
he said,
the famous tears in the
that's
tear
right.
in the rain.
Yeah. He was saying that sounds the original dialogue they had written. He says it sounds like opera dialogue. You wouldn't speak that way, and he adapted it. And now it's come out with some amazing sort of amazing quote. Yeah, very memorable. But this one,
sorry, go on.
So this one they've moved the story on. They've expanded on the world, so it's set. What is it, about 30 years later? And one interesting thing that I didn't discover until afterwards, because I was watching a couple of reviews today, and they mentioned there were some web shorts that were released, fully authorized web shorts by Denis Villeneuve, that he asked to be created. And there's one of them is a 15-minute and a couple of 5-minute little webisode type things made by 3 different directors. One of them is an anime. Watanabe did the anime for it and a couple of live action.
I've seen that floating around on the internet. I haven't watched it.
It's worth watching. They actually fill in certain, like there's a few events that are referred to during the movie, like the blackout. So it's not really a spoiler, but in the movie, after Blade Runner, 2 years later or 2 or 3 years later, there's what they call the blackout, when something erases massive amounts of data and the entire world, like essentially if you could imagine Google, Facebook and everything and all your credit records, bank records completely wiped clean and the world starting fresh kind of thing. And the webisodes go and tell you why that happened. And that was like, that was the replicants who were being hunted deciding we need to clear the deck so that nobody knows who we are. And they just went through and found a way that they could launch EMPs and wipe the place out. So that's so they could hide better in society and that, because replicants are still being hunted.
Yes. Well, taking a step back, obviously Blade Runner, it was a Philip K. Dick book, wasn't it?
Yeah, originally, yeah.
How was it? Do robots have electric dreams?
And, androids dream of electric sheep.
Yeah. So Blade Runner, the movie, was based on that book, but where they've taken 2049, is that still relying on canon from Philip K. Dick?
I don't think so. I have no idea, to be honest. Because, I mean, the original book departed quite massively from... The concept was Philip K. Dick, but really they departed from it almost immediately in the movie. And this one, as I said, they expand on the world. They've suffered a massive, even further environmental collapse, and there's the Tyrell Corporation has disappeared. Oh. There's a new Wallace Corporation that's come through. Wallace was the amazing entrepreneur who invented many ways that could solve food problems and things like that. So he's the new, I guess, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, all combined, and he obviously has an immense amount of power.
Is that the guy played by Jay Leto?
Yeah, and here we have probably the only performance that I really got a fault.
Well, really, he didn't do good.
He's terrible. This is the second movie fortunately he's not in the movie that much, so it's not a big deal. And he is tasked with a pretty weird kind of role. So it's okay, but I don't like the guy's performances. He was the Joker in Suicide Squad, which was appalling. His Joker role was appalling.
I didn't mind his Joker. I just thought that movie had a lot of faults. You can't just solely blame
I'm not going to pin it all on him, but man, his Joker was terrible. But everything else all the performance was really good. Ryan Gosling, pretty boy Ryan Gosling.
He always does a great job.
Yeah,
he does a good bang up job.
That was well done. As I said, so we'll go back and say the visuals were fantastic, but I don't know how much to... Oh, you're probably going to see it because I don't want to... There's not really too many spoilers in it.
To me, you can't spoil Blade Runner. There's no real...
I mean, the question is... the one plot point that comes up almost immediately is it turns out that Rachel got pregnant.
Oh.
So this is the ongoing plot point through the thing.
But she's a replicant.
Exactly. Well, no, she was a Nexus... Turns out Nexus 7.
Ah.
So...
Because she didn't have a termination date.
She didn't have a termination date. So Nexus 6 were the ones in Blade Runner 1 which were trying to get their termination dates extended. Yes. Nexus 7, which you didn't hear about until this sort of movie, where it's not really called Nexus 7. There's just a model in between, because the Nexus 8s have natural lifespans, which is what Ryan Gosling is. He's a Nexus 8.
Okay. You find that out immediately?
Yeah, well, that's actually a narration at the beginning, a text narration saying what's happened. So there were rebellions. The Nexus, there were replicant rebellions early on in the piece, and then there's very few left. But the old one, the Nexus 8s are still being used essentially as labor and stuff like that. But they're heavily controlled, and you can see it's really interesting and really quite jarring. So he's a cop going around. He's a Blade Runner himself, so he's hunting down to retire other replicants. But the other police and other people just treat him like shit, like they're a second-class citizen. And he goes into the police force, and you got other cops sort of fainting at him with fists saying, fucking skin job and shit like that. And it's like, whoa. They're very much talking along the whole slavery class kind of thing, and they're addressing that kind of situation. And that's where these web shorts came in, where the replicants discovered that they were fighting wars off planets. And the only ones fighting, the only soldiers, were both replicants on both sides. The humans were using replicants to fight the battles, and they just went, fuck this. Anyway, well worth seeing, especially if you love the original. Definitely worth seeing on the big screen.
Yep.
A hard movie if you're not into sci-fi.
So did they... what did they decide to do with Deckard? Is he a replicant or not?
I firmly believe he's a replicant. I'm surprised there's any discussion around this. There's so many. I mean, even Ridley Scott came out and said, "No, he's a fucking replicant." He said it a few times. There's in the direct. There was always the unicorn dream where his handler, the other Edward James Olmos, Griff.
Oh, Gaff. Sorry.
Yeah, you're right, Gaff. Was doing the origami unicorn. There's just so many hints at it, and the fact that
what is the significance of the origami unicorn?
It was just that he knew what his dreams were.
Ah.
It was like, because their dreams are implanted, so he knew what he might be dreaming about.
Oh, I'm trying to remember if in the I don't think they do the
In
dream
the
sequence in the theatrical.
No, they didn't.
No wonder it doesn't make any sense.
I can't remember which beat they left out, whether it was the dream or the origami.
No, the origami's in there, but not the dream. So
Yeah.
it makes no sense other than to let you know that Gaff knew that Rachel was in the room.
Yeah. So, and the idea is that Rachel and Deckard is possibly in this. They hint that perhaps he was created to be the mate of Rachel. That's why he was called in to do the test on her, and they would meet, and eventually, so they gave birth. It was to a replicant child.
Wow.
And that's the whole story, is the search for this child.
Does Rachel make an appearance?
No, she's deceased.
Right.
But some of the it's not heavy on the action, but the few action sequences are pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
I liked them a lot. What is he? Batista, the wrestling dude, who's from Guardians of the Galaxy. He plays a good part in it.
I thought
very short
Yeah.
at the beginning, but it's pretty good, and he features in one of the web shorts as well. No, it's a great movie. If you're a fan of Blade Runner, definitely go check it out. I wouldn't bother taking.
No, that won't be happening. No,
it's not necessary.
She if you've ever watched, and I said this to her as I was watching it, and it was like someone in high school trying really hard to understand, pay attention, and then last 30 minutes just
gave it away.
Started lying on the floor, rolling her back out, and it's like, yeah, you've given up. And I go, and I'm just thinking, but the best bit's coming. Look at her in the rain, about to die. What you?
And the speech.
You need to, what you can't bail out. Yeah, now
you've come so far.
And quite literally, for me, that is the climax of the whole thing. That he says that speech, he saves Deckard, he doesn't kill him, he's the realization, so much to do with this great speech.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a few revelations that happen in this. Like they do lead you down. There's a little bit of a twist where you go, oh, that's and the reactions of the characters that are involved, and the way they expand on the Blade Runner universe, and they did drop a few hints, possibly a sequel to come.
That was one of the things I liked about the first movie, was they didn't explain things. You just dropped right in, and there's no backstory. It's just you're right in the story straight away.
There's enough explanation here, and there's also room for a sequel, if they so wanted, because there's clearly the idea of a replicants now being in charge of their own destiny is a theme that they could take into another movie, kind of thing.
Right.
And just the role of I can't remember the name of the actress from that show with Kevin Spacey, the political show where they're playing. He's the president and she becomes the president, I think. What's her name? Oh, I can't remember the name of the actress. She plays a really good role in the as the sergeant to Ryan Gosling's character.
Oh, okay.
And they talk about AI, the effect, like they have not just replicants but artificial intelligent beings, and how that's being affected, very much along the lines of that movie Her. You ever see that one with Joaquin Phoenix?
No.
Oh, there's one that's interesting to watch, but they touch on a lot of issues, and it's definitely worth seeing if you're a sci-fi fan. But if you're not a sci-fi fan, you're going to get very bored. Yeah.
Oh, so what else have we got for douchebag filterage? That was all I really had.
No, that's about all we got.
I didn't cover a lot in the news. One thing that was really I found interesting was Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State in America.
Rexy.
Allegedly called Donald Trump a fucking moron.
How fantastic is that?
And it's very believable.
And wouldn't back down from it.
No.
Admittedly, they made him go out there and apologise, and they made him do a little performative sort of piece out in front of the press. But when the press asked him whether he had actually called him a moron, he wouldn't say he hadn't.
No, he countered it by saying, I won't get into that type of gutter politics.
The one thing I found, I've worked in various industries and things like that. I've worked in some oil and gas. I couldn't imagine a senior oil and gas executive and the kind of intellect and drive that requires you to get to that sort of position. I don't necessarily like those kind of people, but they've gotten there, right? They've definitely got something. him serving under someone like Donald Trump, that must really grate on him. This is a guy who was in charge of a company who, in essence, had a GDP equivalent to many countries.
Yeah.
And he has to serve under someone like an infantile egomaniac like Donald Trump. It must be absolutely galling.
I know what you're saying, but it really depends on. This is an unusual situation in terms of this isn't Rex Tillerson's career trajectory. He achieved what he set out to do. Worked in oil and gas all this time, became CEO of what in effect is a country almost in terms of GDP, as you said, and then retired. Now,
he took this role.
That's why
many
did he take
surmise
this role?
To forward the interests of ExxonMobil. So, I mean, one of the things they were trying to push for were those uplifting of restrictions to Russia, which has completely backfired on them to some extent.
Yes.
Because ExxonMobil have many stranded assets currently in Russia.
And I mean, I can imagine Rex Tillerson from his Exxon days calling many a competitor or CEO of another company a fucking moron when it suited him.
But
so
I don't imagine he had to work under too many for very long.
But I mean, how much you read into that comment necessarily? I believe that Donald Trump is a fucking moron, but I would also suggest that Rex Tillerson probably calls a lot of people fucking moron when it doesn't suit him.
The interesting thing is it came out as a result. Apparently, it was a result of him hearing about Donald Trump's speech to the Boy Scouts.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because Rex Tillerson used to be the head of the Boy Scout organisation. There's a little weird little thing for you, isn't it? He'd been a Boy Scout all his life kind of thing, and he was an Eagle Scout, and he apparently was the head of the organisation for a while.
That's right, I did hear that, yeah.
So all this other stuff that Donald Trump's done didn't really elicit that reaction, but apparently this one did.
What in particular about talking to the
Boys? It was him he was doing these blatantly political speech in front of the Boy Scouts. Also talking about, to some extent, going to a swingers party on a boat in New York.
That's right. Obviously, so something very near and dear to Rex Tillerson's heart. He didn't take.
He got affected. That's right. Donald Trump was dicking around with the Boy Scouts. Anyway.
So I can't imagine that with Donald Trump, ego can handle being called a fucking moron by his Secretary of State. So one would imagine that his time has come.
Well, apparently he's in. From what I heard, there's some kind of suicide pact with him and about two other people in senior roles, so that if any one of them goes, all three of them will go. So possibly Donald Trump can't afford to fire him at this point. If I was in Rex Tillerson's shoes, I'm not sure why I'd want to stay though. If you know what I mean. This is what I was getting at. Why would you want to work under someone like that if you don't have to?
Well, surely he knew what he was getting into in the first place.
Are you absolutely certain? I don't think anyone really anticipated just how bad Donald Trump would be.
Well,
just how infantile.
I did. I had a good feeling that he was a fucking moron.
I thought he'd get roped in. I thought he'd toe the line a little bit better. And for one thing, I didn't expect the President of the United States to be regularly commenting on Twitter. I thought that's something that might cease.
Yeah, maybe.
I didn't think that would continue that way.
Nothing he's done has surprised me from anything he did in the campaign.
I didn't expect him to be constantly trolling North Korea into a nuclear war. That's something I thought that would be reined in. I did not expect him to be quite this bad. I thought the deep state would come in and start controlling him a little bit better.
So you're sort of suggesting that there's enough apparatus around the president to keep control.
Perhaps, but I thought there was. But Donald Trump perhaps there is enough to keep control of the various levers that he might pull, except for the one which he seems to use the most, which is direct public input. Yeah. Where he tweets something out and he's forcing the deep state and everything else to react to it. It's like, because they can't control it. He'll say something directly to Kim Jong-un of North Korea, and get a response from Kim Jong-un, and that's completely bypassing the usual apparatus that are usually in between these people.
The well-honed and developed, what do you call it, foreign office they have that deals with all these matters.
That's right. Normally, you just wouldn't get that kind of interaction.
If you want to have a good laugh, as I do, I regularly check in on the Trump Twitter feed.
Yeah, I check it every now and then.
Funnily enough, he did have another pot shot at North Korea, as per usual. But it's just, the amazing thing is, when any of the major network news stations report something that's not to his liking, regardless if it's true or false, he just calls it fake news. Yeah. It's irrelevant what the facts may be. If it puts him in a bad light, it's fake news immediately.
There's an excellent podcast called Tafu, which is Matt Taibbi and Alex Perrine, and they have a guy on who's been working within the wrestling industry and stuff like that, and they're talking about how Donald Trump perfectly mimics the sort of character of the heel.
Yes.
And they said he's been involved with WWE before and all this kind of stuff. And he this is what he did during the election or during the primary campaign, definitely. He played the heel. He goaded people, trolled them, just flat out insulted them and stuff like that. And they reckon it's just something he's carried on. He's carrying it through into office. So he's doing it to Rocket Man. And
it's interesting you mention WWE because for all intents and purposes, most people realise it's fake.
Yep.
And treat it as entertainment value. And for that period they're watching WWE, they're just suspending belief. But that's in a controlled environment that does nobody no harm. But I wonder if that's the same mechanic.
Doesn't affect foreign policy, for example.
Yeah, but I wonder if the same mechanic there where you have the characters talking to an audience who on a subconscious level, well, I don't know. Is it on a conscious level they realise it's fake, but on the subconscious they just suspend belief and believe these characters are real? I wonder if that same mechanism is what happens with Trump supporters.
With Trump support,
Do they suspend belief because he plays a character that they...
You think perhaps when they're watching WWE, they won't hear that this is all fake. It's not fake. It's quite possible.
They don't... Whether they know it's fake or not, I mean, everyone knows it's fake, but they just don't invest energy on that aspect of watching WWE of going, it's fake. That's like...
I don't know.
It's not a main aspect of them. They don't need to deal with it being fake to enjoy it. They just enjoy it and treat it, suspend belief, whether consciously or not. There's a suspension of belief to believe what's happening in the ring is real.
There probably is a certain amount of truth to the many Trump supporters, those that are still supporting him, aren't affected by the crap that he's doing. You know what I mean? They're relatively comfortable, probably middle class white people that aren't immediately affected by whatever policies he's putting out there. So,
well, why let truth get in the way of a convenient belief system that you wish to, stay committed to?
Yeah, absolutely. Trump's fun. You can look on his Twitter feed, and you can still find people that will argue that he's still got so many supporters out there. No matter what he does, it does not matter.
Jason, MAGA.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I've just got one little story that I was going to mention, a bit of international news. So there's this conflict in Yemen going on still.
Yes, which is a by proxy war between Saudi Arabia and
Well, it's
Iran.
not even totally by proxy. I mean, the Saudis are directly... So it's a Saudi-led, essentially an invasion and direct bombing of Yemen.
But they're motivated by, not Sunni, the opposite of Sunni...
Shia.
Shia interest that...
Yeah, so it's a Shia proxy with the Sunnis. The Iran's sponsoring the other side to some extent, but the invasion, which it's become a huge humanitarian crisis, and it's been there for a while now. So an estimated 1.8 million children that are currently malnourished within the country, and Amnesty International has now announced that they have the worst outbreak of cholera in kind of modern history. So there's been 500 people dead of cholera already, and it's just massive, huge rate. I was watching a heat map of Yemen, and there's some parts of it where there's upwards of 40 people per 1,000 infected with cholera.
Insane.
It's crazy. So, and there's ongoing war crimes. So there's a Saudi-led blockade of the ports. So no, they can't get any humanitarian aid in.
Oh, fantastic.
And things like that. Can't get food and medical supplies in. It's been recognised by many, and particularly in the UN, that there have been war crimes going on there, or at least incidents that are worth investigation.
A theatre of war with war crimes? Jason, can you substantiate that claim?
Well, we'd like to. However, every time I think it's the Canadian government and have been pushing for. So one of the few good things that our slightly tarnished golden boy Trudeau has been asking for is an independent investigation of the war crimes allegations in Yemen. However, it's getting blocked frequently by the UK And the UK's
Really?
Alistair Burt, the Foreign Office Minister for the Middle East, told a bunch. Where is it? I've got the quote here. He told a bunch of reporters in the. Oh, my phone is now. Recently told Alistair Burt, Foreign Office Minister for the Middle East and North Africa, recently told reporters at the UN that the UK government believed that Saudi Arabia was best placed to investigate allegations of.
Oh, you are effing kidding me.
Our view is that it is for the coalition itself, in the first instance, to conduct such investigations. They have the best insight into their own military procedures and will be able to conduct the most thorough and conclusive investigations, he said on the 21st of September.
Did he say that with a straight face?
Oh, there's no picture here. I can't see.
Okay.
So the UK's stance on negotiations in Geneva, which are ongoing, after it emerged that Saudi Arabia has investigated just 36 out of 293 allegations that it has breached international humanitarian law in Yemen, according to the Ministry of Defence.
So what was the chap's name?
Alistair Burt.
Now, I would on one level suggest that Alistair Burke is a fucking moron. Burt. It's a fucking moron. But I know he's not an idiot, so he's just a bold-faced liar.
Yeah, flat out. But remember, Saudi Arabia, are they still currently the chair of the United Nations Human Rights Commission?
I know they're involved with it. I don't know if they were
the chair. No, they were the chair of the...
course.
Yeah. I mean, they can't even control the human rights in their own country, let alone another nation.
Jason, they just granted the women the right to drive.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's progress.
Progress. Yeah.
See, we give them the chair to the Human Rights Commission, and women get to drive. Yeah. See, progress.
So just following on this same story, the panel, which was set up after international pressure to investigate, cited the presence of fighters at the homes, school and medical clinics that were targeted. The latest report released last week said the coalition had acted in accordance with international humanitarian law. David Meepham, Human Rights Watch's UK director, said the UK government was making extraordinary excuses for the Saudi-led coalition and its half-hearted investigations into deadly air attacks. Yemen is Boris Johnson's chance to step up to match the gravity of events on the ground with a strong British policy rooted in justice and compassion, which can help build a better future for ordinary Yemenis, he said. So clearly, at the moment, the UK just want to let Saudi Arabia do whatever they want there.
Well, they have been a friend of the Arab.
They sell a lot
world
of arms to Saudi Arabia.
So.
But I mean, these things need to be pointed out. When I was looking for news on this, you've got to go to some fairly not obscure, but certainly not mainstream media sources to get any information out of Yemen at all.
Yeah.
And that's as big a humanitarian crisis that in Yemen as it is in Syria. Yep. But no one's talking about Yemen because
because no Western powers are in there at the moment.
Well, it's not that no Western powers, but it's being caused by an ally of the major Western powers that we have, which is Saudi Arabia. The US isn't going to speak out against Saudis, and the UK clearly wants to speak out in support. Yeah. So it's just an ongoing humanitarian crisis that
doesn't get much airtime.
It's been going on for not as long as Syria, but for a fair amount of time now. I think it kicked off in 2015 or something like that, and it's been going since. Yeah. What else we got, Franco?
That's all I got.
I'm done as well.
So short show today.
Very short.
All right. Thanks for listening. I've been Franco.
I've been Jason.